Thanos is fighting Doctor Doom and Thor, and it's amazing. Check this out. So what this does here is this picks up based on a couple different things that we've covered so far. As always, you'll find a link to the Thor playlist down below the like button here on the video, but to kind of cover this a little bit, Thor was visited by his sister Lausa from the future, and she showed up because she was sent by Thor's future self to give his younger self a message. Lausa, in terms of being Thor's sister, is kind of, but not directly. What ended up happening is that Thor's adopted mother Freya basically ended up procreating with the demon Surtur, and that's where Lausa comes from, but Freya's not really the biological mother of Thor. She's like stepmom, so I don't know exactly how you want to square that circle. But what she basically told him is, go check on your dead. And it was just a really ambiguous message, and then she jumped into a time storm and went back to the future, and that was effectively it. Now, once this happened, this is where we started picking up on this kind of whodunit mystery in the Thor comics, where Thor went to Valhalla, and the whole place was empty. All the souls of Valhalla were gone, and we didn't know who took them. We had no idea where they went to. Now, one of the things that happens is that while Thor's here, he's met by Valkyrie. Now, one of the things to remember here is that when it comes to Valkyrie, that's basically Jane Foster. Yes, she was Thor in Marvel Comics for a period of time. Anybody who ever reads comics will tell you things always go back to the status quo eventually, which is why just kind of spare yourself the trouble. Don't worry about getting upset whenever Marvel changes things. Enjoy the ride, take the story for what it's worth. It'll all go back to normal in the end. And so once Jane Foster stopped being Thor, she basically became a Valkyrie, meaning she basically guides the bodies of the honorable dead to Valhalla if they die in honorable combat. And to a degree, she's kind of charged with keeping Valhalla safe as a kind of personal guard. So she takes it as like a personal failure when all these souls in Valhalla had effectively gone missing. And that leads her to join Thor on the hunt, because the next place he goes to, based on this statement from Lausa, is of course the most logical location, to the realm of Hell, where Hela rules everything. But when he gets there, the entire place is empty too. There's nobody there. Well, there are people there, right? You have like the Valraven who are there, but they're kind of like feeding on those few souls who remain. But for the most part, the place is largely empty here. Now, the Valraven are not overly important. This is just kind of Marvel kind of establishing to us and reminding us that the realm of Hell is a much bigger place. And that's an important distinction to understand here, that back in the day in Marvel Comics, Hell was just the general afterlife for anybody who died. That changed when Marvel introduced Mistress Death and gave us like a true afterlife, and other gods and goddesses were introduced that had dealings with mortal men and women. But the Valraven themselves just kind of sit on the outskirts of the realm of Hell, and those individuals who were unfortunate enough to stumble across their path are basically consumed. But because the Valraven exists to consume the souls of the dead, Hela largely just kind of keeps them chained up out there, because if they were given free reign, they would just gobble up everything in existence, right? And not all the souls that are here are bad people. It's just they've been here for a really long time. So the thing about this is that as Thor and as Jane Foster make their way through, they initially confront the Valraven. There's not a whole lot doing here. There's kind of a bit of a fight, but they keep talking about how he is here, right? It is here, that it is attacking and destroying everything. And we end up finding out that it's basically Nidhogg, right? Now within Marvel Comics, this is just another being that exists in the realm of Hell that consumes souls, but it's basically a dragon, right? And it's astronomically powerful. What's so funny about this is that it's supposed to have been destroyed eons ago, but somehow or another it's been resurrected. Now in terms of how it's depicted within the Thor comics, it's something that does not have a soul, somehow has a soul now, right? This thing doesn't have a true heart, but there's a heart inside it beating. All this is really doing is just saying this thing's been brought back using a combination of necromancy and technology, and that's it, right? So it's kind of like a hollow shell being controlled more by machine than anything else. But when Thor gets the upper hand on this, it ultimately retreats, and Thor simply follows it to its location. Once that happens, we transition to the guy who's basically behind all of this, the emptying of Valhalla, the emptying of Hell, and as you would probably expect, it turns out to be Doctor Doom, because why not, right? Because why not? Doctor Doom is always vying for power, and in this instance, what he's doing is he's breaking souls, which is amazing, and in fact, he's captured Hela. Now we'll find out how he did that here in a little while, but he basically kind of torments her to a degree, and in fact, what he's trying to do is invoke a spell. And we'll talk about that spell as we get further into this video, but he's trying to invoke a spell for the purpose of basically attaining absolute power. Now, one of the things to know here, right, this is an important distinction to understand. If you're new to Marvel Comics, you may find yourself asking the question, how can someone like Doctor Doom go toe-to-toe against a goddess like Hela? Isn't there some kind of a hierarchy? Yes, there is a hierarchy there, but Doctor Doom is one of these characters that exists out there that, because his knowledge in magic and sorcery is so advanced, it basically elevates him up, right? Once your power achieves a certain level, there is no differentiation between like gods and cosmic entities and so on and so forth, right? Like, it's really just levels of power, varying degrees of power, durability, strength that separate these things. So the answer to your question is yes, there is a hierarchy here, but the reality is the hierarchy that separates mortal men from like Asgardian gods and cosmic entities and different things like that is just varying levels of power and degrees of invulnerability or durability. But given the nature of someone like Doctor Doom and the amount of magical knowledge that he has, he can elevate his capabilities, he can make himself more powerful, and that really pushes him beyond simply just being a dude in Marvel Comics who does some magical stuff sometimes and like fights the Fantastic Four occasionally. It elevates him to a much higher level. It's kind of a shortcut, if you want to call it that. But the thing about this is that Hela goes so far as to say, what you're trying to do here, Doom, is a losing game, right? Breaking souls, it takes a vast amount of energy to do that. But of course, Doctor Doom's motivation in response to this is as basic as it ever is, which is Doctor Doom wants to conquer the world because he believes that he can make the world better than what it is. That's always his motivation. It's usually cloaked and blanketed in some grand scheme, like during Doom War, when he invaded Wakanda and then stole all the vibranium. That's basically just him trying to use vibranium to amplify his own magical energy and take over the world, which he almost did. He was like a hair's breadth away from being able to pull it off, right? But even then, as Hela refuses to answer the question of Doom, which is, how do I cast this spell? He ultimately ends up bringing out the soul of Karnilla. Now, Karnilla is like the love interest of Hela. So it's basically Doctor Doom taking the soul of her wife and then saying like, I will destroy the soul of the woman you care about if you do not tell me what it is that I want to know. Now, that's one of the big differences between the Asgardian gods and almost any other gods that exist in Marvel Comics. You take the goddess of Bast from the Black Panther mythos, or Zeus from Olympus, that they are almost very inhuman. They're disconnected from any real emotional entanglements. It doesn't mean to say that they don't get angry or happy or anything like that, but you don't really see them having the same almost human elements as you do with people like Hela or Odin or Bor or anybody like that. And so because of the fact that basically Doctor Doom is threatening to destroy her love interest, Hela starts spilling the beans. Now, even after telling him how to cast this spell, she still tells him it's a fool's errand, right? The amber that you're using here to basically break souls apart, to burn these souls, that sure, that comes from the Galactus seed, the thing that created the universe itself. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you need the actual Galactus seed itself. Now, if you guys recall the video that we did, we were talking about how Thanos created a new Infinity Stone, which is part of this Thor line of comics, that we talked about how Bor, when he was initially casting this spell, right? Bor being the grandfather of Thor, that he was using the physical Galactus seed itself. It was the only way he was able to pull that spell off without a hitch. But the Galactus seed is not something easily attained. And as far as I'm aware in Marvel Comics, the Galactus seed is within Bor's vault, which is not easily attained. And in fact, it can't even be accessed at the moment. It's just kind of locked away. It used to be in the world tree within Asgard itself, but it was ultimately removed. The bigger point that she's making here is that Doctor Doom's not going to be able to pull this spell off. It's never going to work. No matter how hard he tries, no matter how many souls he burns, it's never going to happen. But the funny thing about this is that Doctor Doom even references what went on with Bor with regards to him casting the spell. And he talks about how Bor had failed when he initially cast it. And the response of Hela is, what are you talking about? Bor didn't fail when he was trying to cast that spell and created the Black Infinity Stone. Bor succeeded, right? Now, that's the cool thing here, is because in the comments section of that video where we talked about how Thanos had created that Infinity Stone, a lot of you guys called the stone right off the bat. A lot of you guys were like, I know exactly what that stone is. And you were right. Right? For those of you guys who know what I'm talking about, a little bit of a spoiler here, you were 100% right. I didn't believe you. I was like, no, you guys were right. You guys called it, right? Hats off. So of course, Thor and Valkyrie end up arriving here in Latveria. And when they do, a fight to a degree unfolds between Thor and Doctor Doom. Not immediately though, because one of the things to remember about Doom is that this guy is what we in the comic book industry refer to as a dick. Because what this dude does is he basically takes all these different human soldiers here in Latveria itself, and using his own power, effectively takes them over and then forces them to turn their guns on Thor. And then following that, when it doesn't necessarily work, he sends them all running to jump off of a cliff. But the reason why he does this is because Doctor Doom knows Thor well enough to know that Thor's a hero first, right? So what he's gonna end up doing is he's basically going to like try to save all these people, and is going to allow Doctor Doom the time he needs to try to complete this spell. It's a smart maneuver. I mean, it is a very smart thing to do, but in the end, it still doesn't work. That ultimately the spell never comes out in Doctor Doom's favor, and the only thing that he can possibly do here is to retreat. And so what ends up happening is he jumps through a time vortex, because what this will do is it'll send him back in time to when Bor was initially casting the spell. The hope here of Doctor Doom is he could basically take Bor out, right? He could kill Bor, and then in turn, with the entire landscape clear, seize the stone for himself and then recreate reality. The funny thing about this is Doctor Doom does not know Thanos is already there, because Thanos was also time displaced. So what you're seeing here is this situation where these different characters, Thanos, Doctor Doom, Thor, they're all arriving in the distant past when Bor is casting this spell to create this black infinity stone, and they're arriving there by whatever manner and whatever means, but all their goals are the same. Now the reason for this is still a little bit ambiguous. Marvel has not fully fleshed out the nature of the black infinity stone. The only thing we know about it is that Thor had some vision during Donny Cates' initial run when he became a Herald of Galactus that Thanos was like standing there with the infinity stones on Mjolnir, a black infinity stone on one hand, leading an army of zombies. That's all we knew, right? That's the only thing we know about the black infinity stone. Make sure you guys check below the like button for the link to that video. But the thing about this is that because Thor is of course trying to ensure that Doctor Doom is not successful, Thor ends up jumping through the time portal as well. And when that happens, you end up with Thor, Thanos, and Doctor Doom all in the same location. Two of these guys want to seize the black infinity stone to recreate all of creation, and one guy wants to stop them. So we get the inevitable conflict that we talked about at the beginning of this video, because Hela's initially freed, right? Hela's freed by Thor, and Hela's like, no man, I gotta go back to Hell, and I gotta get that place sorted out, right? I got more important fish to fry. You go into the past, and you deal with Doctor Doom and Thanos. That'll be your thing. Now, the funny thing about this is that Bor's already gone by this point in time, and so when Doctor Doom arrives in the past, he ends up coming face to face with Thanos. Now, the thing about this is that these guys have met multiple times. They've never had a one-on-one fight, though. Well, they kind of had in Secret Wars, but that doesn't really count. I'm talking about like the main Marvel universe, when it's just Doctor Doom as his normal self and Thanos as his normal self. Because in Secret Wars, that was when Doctor Doom like ripped Thanos' spine out and killed him on the spot, but he had the power of the Beyonders, so that's cheating. That's not really fair. But the thing about this is that as the two of them are here, right, Doctor Doom kind of goads Thanos to a degree. Now, have no illusions here, right? Like, yes, Thanos is time displaced. Yes, Thanos wants to destroy or seize this black infinity stone for himself, but he also understands the power that Doctor Doom possesses. And that's something that is very easily overlooked here, right? Because I think, especially coming out of the MCU and like Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, non-comic book readers kind of look at Thanos as like this super powerful, all-encompassing guy. Not really. I could name 5 people right now who are just like basically humans with incredible power that could take out Thanos like that. They could make Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet look like a kid with a pop gun. So he's not as powerful as you think he is, but he still is a very formidable person. But as powerful as Thanos is, Doctor Doom would rival him, I would argue, quite easily. Given Doctor Doom's tenacity, but especially his intelligence, that would be one amazing fight to see. But the funny thing about this is that this is why Thanos says, like, I have no quarrel with you, Doctor Doom. That's why Doctor Doom responds in saying, that's lucky for you, Titan. And the thing about this is that when Thanos asks, have you come here to destroy the stone? The response of Doctor Doom is, no, it would be the least interesting way to use this power. After all, if you have all will of creation in your hands, if you can change the very essence of life and all you can think of is to end it, it speaks to a deficient imagination. Now, one of the things you guys are going to notice here about Thanos in relation to what he's doing is that it's a little uncommon, right? And it's a little strange because it kind of flies in the face of all the different motivations that Thanos has depicted over the years. So this might be a little divisive. I'm kind of curious to see how you guys feel about it, right? The response of Thanos here is, life is willful chaos. It is destructive and violent. I have seen thousands of civilizations and creatures. None are peaceful. Every single one is destructive in some way or another. The idea of Thanos basically seizing this stone, wiping out everything in existence, and then destroying the stone, it is very reminiscent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Thanos, right? That like he has his own rhyme and reason. The comic book version of Thanos is just the desire to attain the bed of Mistress Death. Literally, he's trying to get with this chick all the time, right? Like he's down bad for Mistress Death. And normally Thanos would just present some argument of how life is meaningless, right? Like some nihilistic response. But approaching this more from like people and everything is just inherently bad, it makes him sound emo. But regardless of how you slice it, during this conversation, and as Dr. Doom looks at the Black Infinity Stone, which has now taken the form of a little girl, he starts to kind of recognize her to a degree. Then it dawns on him who this little girl is. And then he immediately tries to stop Thanos from destroying this girl. The thing about this is that suddenly Thor intervenes. And so what you get here is a kind of three-way fight between Thor and Thanos and Dr. Doom. And it's pretty dope. It's not some grand end-all be-all like Grand Poobah style fight, but it is a pretty solid fight because Thanos and Thor going toe-to-toe, it is interesting to see it happen because Thor is incredibly strong and incredibly durable. Under any normal circumstance, Thor would get dominated here, right? I mean, like it wouldn't even be close. Like Thor would just get crushed. But lest we forget, ever since the death of Odin, Thor has had the Odin Force, right? So his power is way beyond what it traditionally is. And that's how he's able to hold his own in this fight in the first place. He's able to literally pummel Thanos with his hammer. Thanos gets a few licks in here and there, but that's basically it. Dr. Doom, on the other hand, ends up seizing the little girl and then trying to get her away. What he ends up doing here is throwing her into the time portal that Thor and Dr. Doom both used to get here. In that moment, as she's sitting through this, she actually starts aging up, right, into a younger woman, but she doesn't know anything about herself. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know her own backstory, but there are bits of information that she has, things that she's almost kind of inherited. We're not really given a definitive explanation as to why. It just seems to be bits of knowledge that she simply just knows because they're just a part of her existence, right? Almost like a genetic knowledge when it comes to human beings or different animals. And so with Lassa also joining here from the future, she's able to kind of escort this young girl and get her out of harm's way. And in the same process, Thanos and Dr. Doom are tossed into the time portal and they're basically sent back to wherever it was that they came from. So this is how Marvel's going to explain how Thanos is currently running around in like the present in Marvel Comics after being time displaced from the Guardians of the Galaxy story. But for this little girl herself, or I guess really this young woman herself, with Thor rejoining them, Thor now understands exactly what he has to do. Because initially he didn't. He didn't know how to handle like this little girl, this Black Infinity Stone that's manifested in physical form. But what he ends up doing here is grabbing this girl and grabbing Lassa and then jumping to Jotunheim, right? The home of the Frost Giants. And as they get there, Thor engages in what he refers to as fine Asgardian diplomacy, where he basically beats up Frost Giants, right? Because one of the things to remember is that Frost Giants really understand power and strength more than anything else. That's what's the most important to them. So if you show up in Jotunheim with like a box of Girl Scout cookies, well, you know what? That doesn't count because Girl Scout cookies are like the universal peace offering, man. Especially those caramel twirls, bruh, those things are next level. But if you show up there, you know, with some kind of like, hey, let's talk, guys, they're gonna obliterate you, right? They're just gonna destroy you on the spot. And so by engaging in this kind of diplomacy, this allows Thor to make his way through Jotunheim and then bring this girl who he calls Hela to the person that is her father, that he basically tells her, this is Loki and he's your dad. Here's the important thing about all of this. In Marvel Comics, we've never really gotten a straightforward origin for the character of Hela and how it relates to Loki. All we've known over the years is that Hela is somehow the daughter of Loki, and that's it. right? The thing about this is that while Loki is much younger at this point in time than he traditionally is, it's going to allow Thor to introduce Hela and to say, well, Loki's just been around for a really, really long time. But Loki, this is your daughter. Hela, this is your father. And just go from there. It's a whole reworking of Hela's origin in Marvel Comics, but that still doesn't answer the question, how is Thanos walking around with a black Infinity Stone on his gauntlet? Where does it come from? With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.